Welcome to the Weather Guru podcast for July 9th, 2024. We're going to be looking at the remnants of Beryl, of Tropical Depression Beryl. These are the remnants heading up into the upper Midwest here after leaving the Ohio Valley and Tennessee Valley here. So after a week and a half of Beryl's genesis way out deep into the Cape Verde Atlantic, we're finally seeing the end of the system as the National Hurricane Center has issued its last advisory on it this morning. And now let's turn it over to the Weather Prediction Center for Beryl. And so finally the system is winding down here for Beryl, and it is going on here to continue on its journey elsewhere in the up to the Canadian provinces here. So we have Beryl gone here. We can see here that post-tropical cyclone Beryl is making its way through southern Indiana, northern Illinois, and by tomorrow morning it'll be well up into Canada and gone. But in its wake, it's going to leave a lot of showers here and thunderstorms here. And the tropics will be quiet after Beryl, as you can see here. We have a flare up here of a brief little wave here over Hispaniola that's bringing heavy rain to Dominican Republic and Haiti. Heavy rain across eastern Cuba as well in the mountains that is fizzled out here. Other than that, we have this gyre here of moisture, Central American gyre, that's bringing rain all the way down the chain from Costa Rica to Belize to Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama, all the way down the chain into northern Colombia. And out in the Pacific, it's very quiet, unusually for this time of year. We just have a bunch of little waves here, but nothing is going to be organizing anytime soon. And also in the Eastern Atlantic, it's quiet. A few little waves coming off, but nothing is going to be quiet for the next week and a half to 2 weeks here in the middle of July. We have an upper level low south of Bermuda, some showers out there for mariners' interest. And there's post-tropical cyclone Beryl racing away here, bringing rain to Chicago, South Bend, Kalamazoo, Michigan, and up into Indiana. There was some severe storms as well as Kentucky that brought tornado warnings in that area too. And so they had some rough weather there with some of the remnants or left over Beryl. But Beryl was pretty much done. And you can see the Saharan air layer here. This is going to be what's inhibiting any tropical development in the Atlantic, Caribbean, in the Caribbean basins here, as we continue for the next week and a half to 2 weeks until the end of July to pick back up again tropical activity. So you see the Saharan dust layer outlined in red here. This is what's going to be inhibiting the storm. This is what helped Beryl, because Beryl was in that pocket of blue way down here, south latitude here, very south latitude here, and it developed in a pocket here that was no Saharan dust there, and very little wind shear. Then it came up over through Tobago, just between Tobago and Barbados, and it got in there, of course, to the Grenadines and Grenada, and strengthened in that pocket there, they're category 5. But right now, the Saharan dust layer is taking over here in orange. You can see the eastern Atlantic is all the way across here. And this is not unusual for the month of July here. And the upper level pattern is not favorable here. As you can see, a bunch of dry air is in place right now. In the mid-level of the atmosphere here, and that's not favorable for tropical development here. All this orange and dark orange, very dry air and dusty air. Dry and dusty air is a theme for the next 2 weeks in July for tropical development, as well as low-level air. And of course, there's the Saharan dust layer, covering that. So we've covered that. We've covered Beryl, and the Weather Prediction Center does. Now we do have some rain that's going to be coming into some areas here that had drought-stricken areas. New Mexico, where they had the fires, they're getting heavy rains. So northern New Mexico was also they were having a lot of flash flood warnings today. So be careful if you're heading up I-25 and some of these areas northwest of Albuquerque and Ruidoso, New Mexico, as well as be careful down in the south in the recovery area here. South Texas is still dealing with some thunderstorms associated with a little trough along the dry line there. So Victoria, Texas, and areas west did get some rain down there in Corpus Christi. Even though they need the rain in the Rio Grande Valley, just be careful for flooding and flash flooding down there as well. Now, also, we have the hazards. It's been hot. Like I said, the coast has been hot, and this heat will continue, ladies and gentlemen, through the weekend. So we get a break on Friday, then the heat continues. So dangerous heat here in the Coachella Valley, 120 degrees, 125 degrees. They set records today in Palm Springs and Coachella area. Las Vegas set a record at 115, 116. All of these areas here, Lake Havasu City, down to Yuma, over across the Phoenix area, it's always notoriously hot this time of year. So be careful if you're going to be out there and out and about. Excessive heat watches have even been issued for northeastern Nevada, and even Salt Lake City metro area, along with St. George, Utah, and some other areas. So be careful for that. The heat is the story all the way up into Seattle. Don't think you're going to go to the Pacific Northwest and escape this. In the mountains and the eastern passes over Snoqualmie Pass, they got heat advisories in purple here, as well as red flag warnings continuing for dry air that's up there in the PNW by folks in the Pacific Northwest. So be careful up there. And like I said, this flood watch will continue through the night as the remnants of Beryl begin to make their way northward. This includes Chicago, South Bend, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, Detroit later on tonight. They're going to get into the rain. Some points in Canada, London, Ontario, and Toronto. This includes down south here, Champaign, Kankakee, up 57, down 57 downstate towards toward all the areas downstate on 57 there in southern Illinois, Carbondale. If you're coming up 65, Louisville had some severe weather earlier today in the Louisville area, and Frankfort, Lexington up 75 here through Cincinnati. 275. You're coming across that beltway there. Be very careful there in Cincinnati area. There's a lot of storms that in yellow here. There's a tornado watch that continues until I believe 11 p.m. Eastern time, and so you want to be careful in that area. We're going over the local weather for the lower 48 here, so you want to definitely be careful in that area as it continues to impact that area. Now we also have the heat advisories in the southeast as well, and like I said, some of the remnants of Beryl will get over into the mid-Atlantic sometime on Friday, but there's just going to be leftover moisture from a trough, the cold front that's coming through, and so that'll bring some needed relief, and then we go back into the heat for areas like Washington D.C., Baltimore, up through Philly, Trenton, New Jersey, New York City, Boston, Hartford, all the way up into New Hampshire, Manchester, New Hampshire. There is excessive heat advisories that are going to be in place for the next couple of days. We're in the dog days of summer almost, and so this is not unusual. As you can see, the rivers in Texas are elevated, but they're coming down. The bayou system worked perfectly in Houston. There was, some typical flooding areas in White Oak Bayou and some other bayous that flooded, but the levels are going down, and typically they go down between 12 and 18 hours. They start to recede, and the waters are receding, but we do have flood warning on some of the rivers here north of Houston and north of I-45. They'll be coming up there past the Woodlands and Huntsville, Texas there, and all that area. So be careful if you're making your way on I-45 or east counties west of there, and in the Houston area, of course, as well. You just want to be careful as things begin to recede and calm down. Power should be restored, I heard, in the next about a week and a half. I know they had 2 million customers that were out of power, and that should be restored shortly here. One more look at what post-tropical cyclone Beryl was going to bring rainfall here. You may see about additional 3 to 4 inches here, anywhere from South Bend, Indiana to Elkhart up through Jackson, Michigan, up I-94 there, over towards Grand Rapids, and places on I-96 toward Grand Rapids and East Grand Rapids, and over toward Detroit. You're looking at 1 to 3 inches of rain. Chicagoland, you're looking at a little bit less than that, possibly 2 inches for the south suburbs there, and heading into Indiana, Hammond, and places like that. And then down in Springfield, the capital, St. Louis, you're looking at 2 inches of rain out of this before Beryl's all said and done. But the Northeast, be careful in the mountain areas there in Adirondacks, the White and Green Mountains of New Hampshire and Vermont. You're looking at 3 inches, and with that additional lake-enhanced rainfall that's coming off there on Lake Ontario, you could be getting some isolated spots in the mountains and Adirondacks, and it could be getting 3 to 4 inches of rain, 5 inches locally there. Some of the yellow shading there, so be very careful if you're heading up there for summer vacation on boating or anything like that in the next day or so. By Monday, all of this is gone. Actually, by Sunday afternoon, all of this is gone, and we should be returned to normal there. Once again, the remnants here is just kind of bouncing away here, and this system has been heavily east side loaded, ever since ever since it's made landfall here in Matagorda, Texas there, and it worked its way east across northeast, east, and the northeast here, and you can see the track here. It has been let's do a recap here. It's been a heavily east-sided precipitation loaded system here, and you can see the track here of it coming up here. We're in Tuesday, Wednesday, right here in northern Indiana and Michigan, and so by tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, it'll be up into Canada here, affecting Ontario province, places like Montreal and Quebec, and all of that will be getting rain. Of course, that'll be seeping into all of upstate New York and Vermont and New Hampshire. So that's what they're saying. You're going to get that lake enhanced rainfall tomorrow, but it shouldn't be too bad of a deal. But it will cause you to have some caution on the roads and different places. The terrain is kind of hilly up there, obviously, and more so. So right now, it's post-tropical cyclone Beryl, so the winds are no longer 35 miles an hour. It's 25 and below. and it's just a rain event, for majority of the places here. So this is an old map. I just want to show you. It's been turned over to the Weather Prediction Center. They'll issue any other warnings of excessive rainfall warnings or anything like that. But so far, we just have marginal risk for excessive rainfall, and obviously there's no. And we just have to watch out for that severe pocket that could be in there. But today there is like I said, there is a potential for flash flooding. As you know, the ground was not that saturated here, and that zone is highlighted in red here. Most of Indiana here is under a potential for heavy rain and flash flooding as the remnants of Beryl passes tonight. So if you're coming along the Ohio Turnpike 8090 there through South Bend, Elkhart, and Delta, Ohio. Maybe you're coming through there on the Ohio Turnpike or the Indiana Turnpike toll road. Be careful for flooding, as well as in some of the south suburbs of Chicago, like Harvey Hills and all those areas, Palatine, all those areas. Be careful. And southern Kankakee, Champaign, all those areas you got to watch out for. Even the city of Indianapolis itself. And if you're taking the Beltway around 465 and Carmel and Zionsville, you want to be careful because there is heavy rain and flash flooding that's possible in that area. And severe thunderstorms have been possible all day. We've already seen that in Louisville, Kentucky, and Cincinnati, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio. We've seen severe storms pop there, bringing hail, nickel-sized hail, quarter-sized hail, and tornadoes that popped up here in southeastern Kentucky. Even outside of this box that was shaded in yellow today, there was a couple of tornado warnings in east central Kentucky up here, just to the east of I-75 here, and some of those counties there along the Daniel Boone Parkway there in east north central Kentucky. So that tells you there that these storms can produce, even though it's a post-tropical cyclone, it can produce severe weather still, as some of these low-level shear begins to rotate, and these storms begin to rotate as you have winds coming out of the south, southeast, southwest, and you have upper-level winds coming out of a different direction, and they can begin to rotate and produce those severe storms that we see at a time. So just watch out for that with the remnants of post-tropical cyclone Beryl. So once again, all the models were in great agreement as the system made landfall and made through here, and everything is in agreement. This is going to go up into the Canadian provinces of Ontario and up into the Atlantic provinces here of Canada through the St. Louis Seaway, and it just Baffin Bay, and it just becomes just a remnant low, so it's going to rain itself out up there, and so we just got to get prepared, because like I said, this Saharan dust layer here is not going to last forever here. It's just going to be for the next 2 weeks here, as you can see denoted in the orange here, out of the Atlantic. And once this recedes, it's back to the conveyor belt of storms coming off the Cape Verde, Africa there, and flowing up through the north or going through the Gulf. This is only the beginning. We've only experienced about 10% of 12% of the hurricane season. We still have the big months, of course, is the peak of the hurricane season that's coming up in mid-August through mid-September. That's the basic peak. And then we have a secondary peak, ladies and gentlemen, and from October, first week in October 10th to about October 20th or so. And then things supposedly, allegedly begin to die down. But this year is could be one of those record-breaking years like we had in 2004 and 2005. If anybody remember that season, that was a record-breaking season that we had to go to the Greek names, and we had a bunch of storms coming into Florida and crisscross and all that stuff. So that could be this could be the case. We don't know where it's going to hit yet or where these storms are going to hit, but we do know we anticipate more than 24 or 25 named storms. Okay, now whether or not they all make landfall remains to be seen, but Beryl, out of the first 3 storms that we've seen, Chris made a landfall in Texas too, in Mexico, but as well. But that was a fly-by-night storm that came in 30 mile an hour, barely made tropical storm and came in. So now we're up to the named storm. The next named storm is Debbie. And so we're looking out for Debbie, but I don't think we're going to get Debbie until the end of the month, probably, So July could go out like a lamb or it could go out like a lion. So we'll wait and see. But the next week and a half could look to be very quiet out here in all of the basins here. And so that's great news for recovery, great news for cleanup, and great news for those of us who just got to plan and prepare. Those of us along the Gulf Coast, those along the East Coast, those in the Caribbean, to prepare for the next one. To shore up our plans for the next one here. So this is the Weather Guru. I gave you a brief recap of Beryl and a brief recap of what's to come, as long as the storms here as well. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. I look forward to talking to you soon on the next episode. And take care. Blessings.